I couldn't keep up like doing so much, being like just producing everything in an attempt to try to like feel better, to hide or to cover it up. Like I just couldn't keep it up.
This is UNSILENT, a speak series from NoStigmas that champions mental health advocacy and challenges the stigmas that prevent people from getting the help they need. To kick off our first season, I'll be having a conversation with NoStigmas founder, Jacob Moore. We'll hear about Jake's loss of his father and how it immensely reshaped his life. But we'll also see how Jake turned his pain into a mission to help others. If you want to learn more or contact us, visit nostigmas.org. Don't face it alone. Be unsilent. This week's episode contains content that may be triggering for some listeners. There's mention of suicide. Nothing graphic, of course, but it plays an important part in today's story. It's okay if you need to skip this one. Do what's right for you.
I think I struggled so much when I was young, feeling like I was alone, like I was in this world, like I was different because of mental health challenges, losing my father to suicide. And I hid it for so long. I wore this mask and I just pretended that everything was okay. And that ended up costing me so much. And when I got to a point in my recovery, that I had the strength to be able to start to give back to others, I wanted to create that space where people could feel like they could just be themselves and not be judged. And the name NoStigmas came out of that desire, out of that effort. My childhood was pretty interesting because we had this interesting dynamic in our family where my grandfather is still pastor of a Bible church. And he was basically doing like missionary work in Arizona. He was going to like the Native American reservations and doing work there, and had a foster home that he and my grandma ran. And, so my mom was like, a pastor's daughter. And then like met my father, who was someone who like grew up with like abusive alcoholic parents. He was addicted to alcohol, and had, a lot of run-ins with the law, was in and out of jail a lot, and they fell in love. And so at 19 years old, got married, got pregnant with me, and had me when she was 20. So
Wow.
yeah. And then it was like my brother or my sister came a year and 4 days after me. And then my brother came like a year and a half after that. So
Holy cow.
yeah.
So they got married and they're like, all right, we're ready to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but like part of the, challenge was like my mom was like raising us a lot on her own because of what was going on with my dad, because he was just, he would get arrested or, be drunk or be in rehab or, just, he was the kind of guy who like, he had so much heart and so much love, so much charisma and resourcefulness, but he also had this like trauma and addiction and like things that he didn't have the skill sets to be able to overcome. His addiction was so bad that, my mom had to buy beer before she could buy groceries. It was, it was rough, but, then the whole family up and decided to like move to Michigan, which is like where everybody's originally from. And I think that really just like disrupted a lot of things for my mom in ways that were good, because she, I think, kind of understood the dynamic that was happening with my father and understood that needed to change. And so, she took some action around like really setting some boundaries with the relationship, which led to my father, just he just didn't have, like I said, the skill sets or support to be able to take care of himself. And things went pretty quickly downhill for him. When I was 6 years old, he ended up dying by suicide. So it was, just devastating for all of us. I absorbed a lot of that energy. There was, I think, just a great deal of anxiety and, and just, I think maybe just a sense of like unsettledness or like lack of safety that, any young person is just going to absorb that, like I knew how he died pretty soon after he died. So of course, when I was a kid, it was like, I thought of it as a decision and something that he did, to us. And I thought it was like weakness or, somehow, him being like a bad person or weak or something like that. And of course, as I've gotten older and understood, come to understand what suicide is and how someone gets to that point, my views have changed and I've come to peace and come to terms with that. But I mean, there was a long time where I really resented him. I very much, I think, took on the role of like the little man of the house, the responsibility, certainly like the anxiety, the worry that I took on. My mom would often say like, you're like always worried about like adult problems. You're always worried about things that like aren't yours to deal with. And I think that was just like that coping mechanism, at a young age to just try to fix or try to do or try to control what I could. I didn't get to be a kid. Like I didn't, now I'm like, I kind of pride myself in being like pretty goofy and like doing dumb stuff and running around and making a fool of myself because like I didn't do that when I was a kid. Like I was very serious. And so now I'm like, oh no, I've purposefully introduced play into my life to be able to like have that childlike, perspective and mentality. Because I didn't get that. I didn't have that when I was a kid.
So far we've really talked about like this is very young, six to
Mm-hmm.
8, I think you said. I'm curious how this pressure and kind of this mounting anxiety starts morphing and changing as you start to hit middle school, high school.
Mm.
What did those times look like for you?
Yeah. It looked like a lot of acting out. Um, I just always had a lot of energy, couldn't sit still. I was not great in school. There was, just like gaps in memory. I feel like I time traveled through a lot of, that period of my life. So I wasn't really like present in school, like emotionally, mentally present. There's just like chunks of like, basic arithmetic and grammar and spelling and things that I just I just didn't learn growing up because my brain was just checked out, somewhere else. I wasn't being engaged that way. And so like I acted out and I got in trouble a lot. I was the kid who was sent out in the hallway and down to the principal's office and expelled. I was just always getting in trouble. From middle school to high school, um, there was like this opportunity to reinvent myself. Uh, and this is when I say like I really started to like put on this mask and pretend. And um, I really just sort of like curated this image, this persona of like Jake, eventually it caught up to me. Um, I couldn't keep up the grades. I couldn't keep up the persona. I couldn't keep up like doing so much, being like just producing. everything in an attempt to try to like feel better, to hide or to cover it up. Like I just couldn't keep it up. And so it was like, I don't have a lot of options, like the best option for me was a trade school. I couldn't get scholarships to go to school. I didn't have the grades to get in, so all my friends are applying for college and looking at what they're going to do with their lives. And I was like, I don't know. Like I have some things that are interesting to me, but I was directionless. And I think that plus the long Michigan winters and the things being unaddressed for so long just caught up to me, and I got really depressed. I stopped caring, stopped taking care of myself, stopped going to school, and I just kind of checked out. And eventually I just stopped caring whether or not I lived or died. And it was like this apathy just like took over me. And I was like in so much like emotional pain that I just wanted it to end. And that was a really dark and scary time because it was the first time that I really understood what my father must have been going through, and really realized like, oh, he was in, like, if he was in half as much pain as I was, then like of course he didn't want to live anymore. Like who would want to,
If you or someone you know is experiencing a crisis, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org for support via live chat. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, please call 911. Other resources are linked in the show notes.
But I'm really, really fortunate because my mom was there, and she recognized what was happening. And she'd seen it before, right? Now she had the skill sets to be able to do something about it, to be able to intervene, to be able to take positive action. And she literally like picked me up and took me to the doctor and helped me get the help that I needed. And if she hadn't, I wouldn't be here today. It was a long, steady march out of that. It was a lot of like taking meds and going to therapy and trying different tactics and enrolling in community college and dropping out and getting a job and losing it and starting a relationship and ending. And I mean, this was like basically this is my 20s. It was just that during that whole time, it was just trying to figure my stuff out. And it was like during that time I saw, a dozen different therapists, 33 different combinations of pharmaceuticals. I had a bunch of different diagnoses, like everything from seasonal affective disorder to, panic disorder to, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. Like they just like threw the whole DSM-4 at me
Manual.
at the time. Yeah, it was like, it was such a tumultuous time, and I had so many, roller coasters of experiences and emotions during that time. It was a lot. So it was like a super angsty period of time, but it was also, there were these like beautiful moments of clarity as well, where I could like just see, the truth of something and understand why,
Those moments are so valuable. through a mental health journey, because it's really like an anchor point, something to kind of hold on to of like, all right, I see who I can be, I see where I can go
Yeah.
in the midst of it all. You got to hold on to those.
One of those major sort of anchor points for me was um, meeting someone who I came to think of as a mentor, um, someone who shared their own personal experiences with me, um, and provided what I didn't know at the time. Now I know is peer support. And this gentleman, so we met on a plane. Um, I was going to Argentina, and I at the time had a lot of flight anxiety, and so my solution to that was taking a sedative and um, drinking a few gin and tonics, and that was how I tried to get through long flights. And this guy, so like we both lucked out. We were at the back of the plane, and we both had a row to ourselves, and so we were just
Oh,
sitting there, and
nice.
yeah, and it was like shortly after takeoff, and he just looked over at me, and he's just I recognize you. I recognize myself in you, what you're going through. And
And is he a stranger at
and
this
at this
point? Like,
point, he's a stranger. And, but I thought like I had my stuff together, but apparently, it was clear, especially to someone who had been through, or gone through similar things. Like I think, um, he saw it and he just like called me out on my BS, Um, but it was interesting because, he shared like kind of unprompted, that he had had some similar experiences, that he had lost a parent to suicide, been through depression, and come out on the other side. And hearing from someone firsthand who had like not only gotten through it and survived, but was now in a place in their life where they were thriving, where they had peace. It was like this light bulb for me going off, and understanding like, oh, well, if they can do it, then I can do it too. I had to take ownership of what I was experiencing. When I started to do that, uh, everything changed, and I started surrounding myself with more positive people, with mentors, with people who helped to lift me up. And I started looking at like, well, what am I putting in my body? How is it affecting me?
mm,
How is it affecting my energy, my mood? Now I know that as fuel, the second bridge. Anything and everything from like the things we eat to the media we consume, like all have an impact on our system. And then I started looking at like, how does my exercise and physical fitness and my mobility play into this? That now I know is what we call move, our third bridge. And then what about my sleep habits and like the routines around, my like resetting or retreat? Like, what does that look like? So now that's the fourth bridge, rest. And then like, how am I giving back? How am I contributing to society? How am I using these things that I've learned and the gifts that I've been given to help others? And that's the fifth bridge. That's give, our positive output. And you know that's the one that led to no stigmas and to five bridges, and to be able to provide peer support and be able to help other people find their own paths and customize their own wellness, because it's not something that you can do um, if you don't have a roadmap.
and kind of as we wrap up and start to close, do you have any final thoughts on how we can help love others, how we can create a space for them?
I think, we don't truly ever know what it's like until we go through it, or until we know someone who goes through it. Um, but if we can just suspend that disbelief and allow ourselves to just trust that someone's being, honest and true about the way that they're feeling. Like, no one would choose to be depressed. No one would choose to be anxious. No one would choose to go through and subject themselves to stigmas or to judgment from people. Who would? Who would, if they had the choice to be positive and bright and cheery and never have any issues? Like, who would not choose to do that, right?
Right.
So, like, can we give them the benefit of the doubt? Can we give them a little grace, a little understanding? I think that to me is the greatest gift that we can give anyone, is that non-judgment.
Willing to just go in, suspend all whatever personal things you've got going on, and just listen.
Yeah. Listening, I think, is one of the most challenging skill sets, but one of the greatest gifts that we can give someone is just our time, right? It's a non-renewable resource, is our time. And when we choose to give that to someone else, it's incredible what that can provide to someone. Just the understanding that someone cares, someone wants to know, is willing to hear all the uncomfortable, dark, dirty bits. Like, that's a huge gift. Yeah.
This is UNSILENT. Thank you for listening. Today's episode was hosted and produced by me, Eli Lawson, Lance Bordelone, John Panicucci, and the rest of the incredible NoStigmas marketing team. Special thanks to Jacob Moore for sharing his story today and making this whole thing possible. To go beyond the show, connect with us on social media or visit nostigmas.org to learn more about mental health topics. Consider leaving us a positive review wherever you listen to podcasts and sharing the show with your friends. We'd really appreciate it. You can expect a new episode of UNSILENT every Wednesday from here on out. And remember, whatever you're going through, you don't have to do it alone. Be UNSILENT. We'll see you next week.